Hey everyone, it's Murray5 here. Today I'm going to do the second installment of hopefully what will be more presentations as I work through the bare bones configuration guides and set up dynamics in my environment. And in the previous stream, what we did is we went out and we did some of the initial configuration of dynamics as we're starting to move through and create a organization and a legal entity. But there's still a little bit of housekeeping that we need to perform to keep on going. So we're going to continue through this process, and we're going to configure the global address book. We're going to configure some other areas and set up some other information along the way. So hopefully this is interesting. Now, before we continue on or start doing this, for those of you that have just stumbled upon this, what I'm doing is I'm setting up Dynamics 365, but I'm creating it from scratch, and also we're having a little bit of fun with this, and we're setting up the environment with a Dungeon and Dragon sort of style theme that's associated with it. So we're going to be configuring the Waterdeep Trading Company, purveyor of the finest adventurer supplies in all of Faerûn and the Sword Coast. And we're going to have all of that set up within the system. And as we move through these, and there's going to be a lot of these sessions, which I'm going to try to keep to 25-minute bite-sized chunks, we're going to see and learn all or most of the ways that the system works so that you've got an idea of what's going on. So let's start and let's move over and look at dynamics. So what I'm running here is I'm running my lab. If you want to apprentice on this, then you can sign up, and I can actually get labs that are running and that have this same sort of blank configuration that we're running in the system. And I've got in the previous presentation that we did, we went out and we created the Waterdeep Trading Company, and we set up some core information along the way. And there's not a lot of information in here, so we're going to continue on and build out some more of the configuration that we've got here. So as you can see, I'm running in my lab environment, and I've got dynamics running here. So if we go out and if we start looking at the next step that we're going through, and what I'm using is I'm going out and I'm part testing and re-experiencing and sort of working through my own documentation. So these are the bare bones configuration guides for the Advanced Dynamics 365 configuration, and we're got to the step here where we still have some housekeeping that we need to perform. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to look at the global address book. And the global address book is the area that's going to have all of the addresses and the contacts and vendor information and customer information all stored away within it. And we're going to just stylize this a little bit or configure it so that we can have some uniformity, I think that's a word, in how we set up the system. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out and access the global address book parameters, and then we're going to change some of the information. We're going to look at how we manage or look at customers and prospects and vendors. Also, we're going to change the way that we display the names that are set up here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this, and we'll go back to my lab environment. And I can get to the global address book just by doing a search in the menu bar. Now, if you want to, you can also go into the common area or actually the organization administration, and we can go into the global address book and get to the same area here, or the global address book parameters, directly from the menu. I like using the search, but sometimes you want to go out and you want to find the right item here in the menu. So let's go and look at that and open that up. So this is Now that we've got the global address book open, then what we're going to see is we're going to see some information on the setup that we're working through. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we'll start off by defining what we want as the default record types for all of our entities. Now, this has been set up, and what we have is we've got parties, which can be people or organizations. And when we set these up, how do we want to set these up? I'm actually going to change this. And most of the people that we're working with from a global address book standpoint are going to be people. That doesn't mean that we can't work with organizations, but when we talk to when we set up a person, then they're going to have a first and last name. They may have middle names and so forth. When we set up an organization, then an organization is just going to have an organization name. So this, the record type that we're setting here between person and organization says that by default, when I set this up, I'm working with a person just by default. Now, when I create a new customer, because we're the Waterdeep Trading Company, then we get a lot of people off the street and we get a lot of adventurers. And primarily all of our customers are going to be people. Now, we may work with other customers. We may have guild customers. We may have different organizations, other trading partners that we're selling to. But in general, we're going to talk to people. When we buy things, in general, we buy from an organization. We buy from the guilds, and we buy from growers, and we buy from organizations. We buy from the magical suppliers, and they're businesses. So rather than having to change the format of this every time we create a new vendor, then I'm going to say that we work with an organization. Prospects are, when we set up the sales and marketing, are going to be people. So just like the customers. So a prospect is generally going to be a person, as a customer is going to be. And then if we're tracking the competition through the sales and marketing module, then the competition is usually going to be a company. It's not going to be a person. So by default, we want to set up the company or the competitor as being the default of an organization. None of this is going to break the system if you don't set it up correctly. All it means is that every time we create a customer, we'd have to switch over to be to a different entity type from organization to person, or vice versa. But it just saves a couple of keystrokes here and there as we're moving through. Now, also what we're going to do is when we set up a person, then how do we define their name, or how do we define the display of that person? And we may want to just have the first and last name of the person showing up, or we may want to be a little bit more controlled and have the last name as the first part of the description that shows up. So for a vendor, then it may be Lydia Stonebrook, but we want it to say Stonebrook Lydia. So when we do a search, we just look up their last name and find that. So we can go out and we can manipulate how the names are formatted and described when we create a new entries. Now, in this case, I'm going to say I want it to be the last name, put a comma between it, and then have the first and middle names in there. We can go and change this however we want. We could have last and first name, or any other different combination that we've got here. For me, my personal preference is to have the last name first, just to have that set up. Now, there's other configurations that we can set up here, but for the most part, this is the configuration of the global address book that we want to manage. So you can play around with these if you want, have different formats, but it doesn't. It's not going to break the system if we don't have this set up correctly, but we can go out and save a couple of keystrokes as we go out and do that. So I'm going to save that and then return back to the lab environment. So if we look at the global address book, all we're doing here is we're going in and we're changing the default organization types, and then also changing the name sequence and moving on. So if we're moving through the documentation, then you can also change some of these, and we could have different legal entities with different naming formats and naming conventions, which is interesting. So, for example, if we have different regional requirements by legal entity, then we could set each individual legal entity up with, or organization up with, its own profile. So we're continuing on and moving on through some of the setup and some of the defaults we have within our blank company. And the next item that we're going to look at are the address books. So whenever we go out and create customers or create vendors or create party relationships within the global address book, then we can go out and we can link them to an address book. What that is just saying this is possibly a customer or a vendor, or maybe we have different regions for our parties that we're working with, and it's just a tag. But what it means is that we can go out and we can look in a certain address book and we can find all the customers. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the configurations, and I might create a couple more that aren't in here. But by default, we can go out and we can create a default address book. We can also go out and create address books restricted to customers, vendors, and products. And maybe we could create some which are Waterdeep customers, or Silvery Moon or Baldur Gate customers if we want to. So let's look at that. And what we're going to do is we're going to find the address book. So again, we can look up the address books, and the address books can be found through the menu search, but also they're in the organization administration. So if I go to the organization administration, then we've got the address books showing up here inside of the menu. Just preference on how you want to access these within the system. Now, we've got some more address books that have already been configured here. So we've got our customers address book, we've got vendor address books, we've got other classifications that we've got here. So we've got a blacklisted list of address books, Adventurers Guild, ones that require export licenses or that are licensed export entities, and also magic suppliers. But also, if we want to go out, I'll create a new one here. So maybe we want to have a list of customers that are only based in Waterdeep. So this could be so we could have Waterdeep located contacts, or maybe contact. Let's change this to make this nice. I'd say contacts located in Waterdeep. And having a good name or a good description associated with any code, I find is really useful. So instead of going out and saying we have an address book that's called Waterdeep and then make the description Waterdeep, then why don't we go out and say how do we want to use this, so that when people go out and look at this data, that they can actually see why we've created this address book, in this case, the Waterdeep address book. So I'm just going to save that. And I've got additional items here. If I wanted to create another one here that I've got set up in my documentation, then I could create one just for retail customers. And I could say that this is the retail address book contacts. Now, we don't have any teams set up yet, because we've barely started setting up the system. But we could also go out and say that only certain teams have access to this. So if, for example, we have a retail team, then maybe they have access to the retail customers. If we have a call center team, then maybe they have access to the customers and the retail area. Also notice that we've got employees as an address book. So when these address books aren't just for commerce and not just for customers or vendors, because parties within the organization are everyone. Their employees, their customers, their vendors, their prospects. A party can also be workers, and really anything that's got a name and an address is going to be a party, which is at the high level of all of our sort of contact structures. So this is going through and setting up some of the address books that we'll use later on, but it's a good way that we can go out and organize our contact information. So if we look back at what we're doing, we're just configuring the address book and we're creating all of these different addresses. Now you could go out and create many more of these to your heart's content. And also what we can do is organizations or people can belong to multiple address books. So when this isn't an either or scenario where we just have one address book that a party is associated with, they can belong to multiple address books that help us along the way. So we could go and we could extend this out. If we want to follow the instructions, we could create the VIP customers. One thing they'll do to continue with this documentation is I'll add a whole slew of other examples of address books that I've got set up here within the Waterdeep Trading Company example that I'm setting up. So some more configuration that we need to do around that will make life easier for the organization is to go out and set up our working time templates. So we're going to have calendars and set up some calendars within the system, but also we want to say, when do these calendars operate? What time frame are we working in? So we need to go out and create what's called a working time template. This is what we're going to apply to calendars to say, when is, for example, the store open? When is the warehouse open? When can we receive goods between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m.? Or maybe we have multiple shifts where we're going from 6 to 12, 12 to 6, and so forth, or have 8-hour schedules, however we want. But before we can go out and do that, before we can create calendars and set these up, then we need to create these working time templates. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a default working time template that we use that's going to be the basis for all of our calendars but we can also go out and create other ones that are very specific to tasks if we want to. So let's go back to our screen and we'll start working through this within the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the working time templates. And something just as a side note as we're going through, the reason why I like the search is because it's flexible and it's got some intelligence to it. And I'm looking for the working time template. And usually you'd think that I'd go work, and we're seeing everything that starts with work, and we have to go through and search through this, and we can't actually see the working time templates. But we could go working time, and then this is going to show us the working time templates here, and then some other ones that sort of match. It's got a soft search. But if I want to be clever, then I can also go and just use the first characters of the search. And this one didn't work very well because there's a lot of things which have W and TT. But if I go work TT, then it's going to find the working time templates that we're going to set up. So I sort of diverged a little bit as we're moving through, just to show you a trick or a technique that you can do to go out and find items. So again, this is, if we look at this and if we want to remember and mainly use the menu items, then the working time template is going to be an organization administration setup calendars. So if we go over here and go into the calendars, then we can actually see the working time templates configured here as well. So let's go and pop that up. And where now we're getting to the point where I hadn't set up any information. So we're going to see a lot more setup here as we move through. So we don't have any working time templates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new template. And I go out and I usually create a default record when I'm setting up things like this. So you'll see that I go out and I create a default working time calendar, or a default calendar, and some other items, because we can always use that as a fallback. And then we can go out and create specific items, for example, maybe a manufacturing working time template with it. But just for me, I like going out and creating this default template. And what we're going to do is we're going to save this. So now that I've got this, then what we need to do is we've got all of our dates here. So we've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So what hours are we going to be working here? So I'm going to go out and say, I could say that I'm working from 12 to 12. So I could have a 24-hour day. That's a little bit rough on the employees. So I'm going to say I'm going from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So this is going to be a normal work day that we've got set up. Now, if I wanted to, I could say that I work from 8 to 12, and I could say then 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. So I could have a lunch break in between with the efficiency. So if you want to go out and if you want to have breaks, or if you want to have different groupings of times, then we can do that. Also, what we could do is here we could go out and we could say these are 4-hour shifts. So I could go from 8 to 12, 1 to 5, 6 to 12, 1 to 5. The math doesn't really work out with that. But we could go out and we could create any number of different combinations of the times. So even though my documentation says that we're working from 8 to 5 with no lunch break, let's add a lunch break in here. And then I can just go out and save this. Now, what we have to do is we have to go out and create this for all of the other days as well. Now, it's not that hard to go out and set up this. It's only a couple of keystrokes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that, let me cancel this. I'm going to copy this day. I'm copying Monday to Tuesday, and it's going to do all of the setup for me. So if I have a detail, something a little more complicated than this, then this can go out and save me time. But I'm going to continue through, and I'll go from Tuesday to Wednesday. Set that up within the process, or within the working time. Copy this to Thursday, and then I'll copy this again to Friday. So now we've got our default time template that we've set up. I'm not going to make them work on Saturday and Sunday. We're going to take those days off. This is going to be purely for the warehouse, and I just don't want to work on Saturday and Sunday, and don't think that they should as well. So now we've gone out and we've set that up, and we've now got a working time template that has the hours that we're working, and we can apply this to the warehouse. We can apply it to the delivery schedule. We can go out and we can apply this to the manufacturing line as well, to say that we're only working from 8 to 12 and 1 to 5 as a main working day. So this is how we go out and configure sort of one of these base elements, which is the working time template. Now, the final thing we do, I'm trying to keep this presentation in bite-sized amounts, less than half an hour. So the final item that we're going to do is we're going to configure a calendar for our organization. And the calendars are going to be what we actually use and apply when we go out and do our scheduling. And calendars will use the working time template to say what hours are we working, but the calendar will also say what days are we working. For example, Saturdays and Sundays we're not working. And then also it allows us to go and tweak this. So if we have national holidays within the calendar, then we can set these up and we can make those non-working days. And also we can set these out into the future as far as we want. Because if we don't have a calendar, then any scheduling or any forecasting is going to fail because it can't work out what hours are we working, what's the capacity, and what's the time that's associated with it. So we're going to go out and create a default calendar that's associated with this. And then also we're going to go out and assign some working times to it. So for this final section that we're going to work through today, if I look at this, what we're going to do is we're going to look for the calendars. And what we've got is we can look at the calendars. We can actually set up calendars a number of different ways. I'm going to go through the organization administration since I've been going out and setting up all the calendars through here. So if I, again, go back to organization administration and go down to the setup and over to the calendars, then there's a calendar option that's here that allows us to set up our calendar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new calendar. And this is the default. And this is our default calendar. And I'm going to just create this. If we've got another calendar in the system, then we can go out and use a base calendar for that. So we don't have to go out and set up working times over and over again like we're doing right now. But for this is the first time that we've created a calendar. So we need to configure this. Now, the calendar by itself doesn't have any, hasn't been set up with any working times or any dates associated with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the working times field here. And this is going to take us into a new form where we're going out and we're seeing what are the days that we're working, what are the calendar hours that we're working within the system. Now, this is blank, and we could go out and we could create these if we want with the working times, but I'm just going to say I'm going to compose this. And I'm going to get the system to create this for me. Now, I'm going to create it for the default calendar, and I'm going to create it from the 1st of January to out for around about 4 years. 4 years should be fine for now. We could extend this out even more if we want to. And then also what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to create a working time. I'm going to use a working time template, which we just set up, which says what are the hours that we're working. All I need to do to create this initial calendar is just start that process off. So what this is doing is this is going out and doing all the work for us. It's going out and choosing all the dates and looking at the, whether it's a weekday or a weekend, looking at the hours that are associated with it. If we wanted to set a four-day work week, then we could do that. If we want to set a 7-day work week, we can do that as well. And it's going out for the next 5 years actually, and building all of this for me so that we don't have to set this up ourselves. If we go out and we've got this environment and in 4 years we're starting to hit the limit of our working times, then we just go and rerun this process. But what we're going to do is we're going to say, I want to run it from January 1st, 2030, and then extend it out for however many years we want. So this is running in the background. We'll just talk about this for a second as it moves through. Now, while this is finishing, then we're going to sort of wrap up a little bit, because we'll go back over to the documentation. And we can see that we've got, we're doing all of these steps on how we want to extend out the dates. And if we want to go out and do any of the other calendars, for example, in this case, we've got a research calendar, then we could create a new calendar and change the working hours around that. All of this is related to the the base working times that we're running, and then also the date range that we want to create these calendars for. Also, if we have a location, possibly that is just a limited time location. So maybe we have some sort of operation that we're only performing for maybe 3 months of the year. Then we can go out and we can create our calendar and just create those periods here within the system. And then when we go to our additional modules where we're going out and managing the process, then it's going to honor those times here within the calendar. So what we're going to do is let's just let that run. I'll show you all tomorrow how that finished. It's taking a little bit longer than I thought, but usually only takes like a second or so. And we'll stop here and gives you a starting point or the second steps for how we're setting up all the base configurations for our organizations and our legal entities, which is what we're going to be needing to do within really any implementation that we do. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop here and finish this section. We've been talking for around about 30 minutes or so as we've been moving through this documentation, and I hope this is useful. And this is the starting point. We're not solving world hunger right now with all of the setup, but we are laying the base setup configurations that we need in order to go out and set up the ledger and set up the financials and all of these other things. So, but since while I was talking, we can go out and we can see that the dates actually did complete. And now what we've got is, as we go out and look at the working days, then we can see all of the times that we've set up. We can see when the calendar is open or closed. We can actually go in and manipulate this and change it if we want to within the system, and also the default date periods are set up. So that finishes this section. Tomorrow we're going to go out and look at some other actions. Looking through this, we're going to set up some worker information and some default email configurations and some templates associated with that as well. But hopefully this was useful, and this isn't too much information to help you with setting up your own advanced Dungeons and Dynamics 365 environment. And again, if you're interested in lab environments, then just call me, and we can try to set you up as an apprentice through the Patreon site, and then get you up and running with an environment. So have a good day, everybody, and watch out for the next live session.